Everybody, welcome to Black in America Part 2. This is the solutions video. I'm going to try to keep it brief, but I probably might end up ranting because doing my research for this video, I came across some statistics that were kind of disappointing. Um, so let's just jump into it. First thing we see here is median household income in 2015. The reason why I use 2015 as a data set is because that's the most recent data set the U.S. Census Bureau has that allows me to look um, at equal dollar value rates across multiple African demographics. And that's what I did. I spent the last, it's 8 now, I spent the last 2 hours researching statistics and numbers to make this video because I had ideas of how things would be, but I didn't realize how easy it was to fall into the rabbit hole. Like I had the numbers that I wanted to report on within about 15 to 20 minutes, but then I spent the next hour and a half after that wondering why the numbers were the way they were. Like they were a little bit more extreme than I thought. Let me give you an example. Okay, so before I get there, I'm using factfinder.census.gov, so you can go fact check a bunch of stuff. This chart right here, I'll explain it later. This is talking about the employment rate in 2015. And it's actually significant because I think it has a major impact on our inability to earn in 2015 and probably today, honestly. But the first chart we're going to look at that Excel crashed for me earlier is this median income in 2015 and the way it breaks down. So you'll see it's sorted by the lowest earning resident to the highest in terms of their country of origin. And you see just plain old African American descendants of slaves, we don't perform at the bottom. We perform near the bottom, or in this case near the top, since it's sorted that way. And what's significant is that the three countries that perform more poorly than Black African Americans in the demographic are all three countries that have been ripe with drama, quite frankly, in the last decade or two. So we can, I believe, based on looking at these numbers and seeing that bottom group, that I will accept that there's still a lot of cultural growing they need to do to be able to stabilize their earning and create a foundation here in the country. A lot of the Somali and Sudanese immigrants haven't been in the country very long to begin with as of 2015. So what I want to draw your attention to is Nigeria, Kenya, and Zimbabwe, right? So these are countries where we know the people look like us, right? The vast majority of the people that come from these countries look like us, and they're doing pretty well. You saw the median income; it was 55,000. These three countries are doing more than on average 60, with Zimbabwe killing it at 67, and then you can see Tunisian and Maltese killing it, right? So these are people who originate from Africa. South African killing it, but then people like Elon Musk sway that because Elon Musk is South African. That's the reason why I didn't point to him directly. But the point behind this chart is assume all those buzzwords were true. White privilege is a thing, systemic racism is a thing, mass incarceration is a thing. Assume it all is true, right? If that were the case, then we should, as a ethnicity, be performing at around the average for all of these groups, and we're not. We're underperforming by any margin, and these groups here are dragging down the average drastically. And it stands to reason then, though, that if there was some type of consistent thing holding everyone who looks like us back, that none of these higher numbers would be possible. But they are. They're all possible. I'm getting dings and buzzes. So what's going on? So one of the things that I noticed while I was playing around with the numbers, I went and grabbed another chart. Um, so this is the same chart but broken down by estimating the amount of people in each earning group. So that's what this top chart is. And then this bottom chart is my own quick little formula calculating the amount of people who earn less than 40K, less than 50K, more than 65. I'm going to change this category to between 50 and 75. And then let's change the formula real quick. And so what's significant about this number, um, well, it's twofold. The first thing that's interesting is if you look at um, the amount of people in total in the earning group for 2015, you see it at 14 million, right? Just over 14 million people. But let me move this out the way real quick. The amount of people eligible to work in this country in that demographic, Black or African American alone, was 26 million. Right. So of the 26 million people eligible to work, only 14 actually were. Uh, that will drag down our national average earning pretty easily, right? And what you'll see is that women had a far higher employment rate than the men, um, which makes sense because in our ethnicity, women are better providers than the men for some reason. Not to be sexist, but I still believe in the traditional role that the man should, you know, bust his ass and freaking cross rivers of fire to take care of his family. Period. No negotiation. But anyway, that's a rant, a tangent, whatever you want to call it. So looking at this information and accounting for the fact that we're actually not fully employed, that's actually a pretty big number. 14. That's almost half. That's just shy of half of the people eligible to work in 2015 were actually working. Wow. Okay. So anyway, um, what we have is a situation where there's not much we can do about people not working. But what we can do is look at these numbers and say, well, it's not impossible, right? There are groups um, of black people that are earning more than $200,000 a year. What is that? 240,000. Hey, let me add the commas for you guys. Okay. What in the blue hell? It's there. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, um, 240,000 people earning 200,000 or more a year. That's pretty impressive to me. And when you look down here where I broke it down, you've got almost 3 million people out of the 14 million people who make money in this country that are black alone, earning more than 75,000 a year, right? Uh, I didn't want to go into age, but 75,000 is significant for a couple of reasons, right? Number one, where you fall into the 1% spectrum varies with your age. The older you get, the more wealth you have to have generated, and then the higher your annual income needs to be able to qualify as being part of the 1%. But when you start off young, when you're in that 18 to 23 category, or like my demographic category where I'm 31, what you need to earn falls drastically to be in the top 1% of earners in your age bracket. And for like the 23-year-old, you only need to make 120 something a year to be in the top 1%. So seeing that there are literally millions with an S of black people who are earning more than 75K and 200,000 earning more than 200K is pretty significant. I mean, look at that, 733,000 earning between 100 and 124K. So the question is, again, if there's some special thing holding everybody back, then why isn't this chart more evenly distributed? Meaning, why don't we see a huge chunk of all the earners somewhere in the middle when we break down by the number of people who earn in each range, uh, versus what we see here, where, quite frankly, 2 million people earning less than 10,000 a year doesn't make any sense, right? The Well, let's find out what the national minimum wage was. Okay, U.S. minimum wage, 2015. What? Back when I used to work minimum wage, it was 7.25. Okay, 7.25. 7.25 an hour, right? So if we do okay, let's open up a calculator real quick. We're gonna pretend taxes don't exist right now. 7.25 times 80 times 26, 15,000. So if you just earn minimum wage, you'd make more than that 15,000 mark. So that's pretty confusing then. Why is it that? But this is my point, right? So all these external forces that we say are holding us back, when you look at these numbers here, this stuff doesn't make sense. And this is why I was stuck for 2 hours. Because I was trying to rationalize, number one, why there are 14 million people reporting as income earners in 2015, but there are 26 million eligible to work. It does not compute. It doesn't make sense. And then you see there were like 4 million, 4,448 did not work in the past 12 months. 4,399 did not work in the past 12 months, right? So you have 26 million eligible to work and more than 8 million didn't. Well, that would drag down our average significantly. And the basic argument that you see back and forth between the left and right, that there's racism, this or this, that, and the third, it doesn't hold up when you look at the numbers. Because why does a Nigerian American, right, why does he get to come in and basically dominate the earning, right? Compared to, like, what is this? Almost double what we make per year. Why does somebody from Zimbabwe have the ability to make almost double? You know, something else is going on, right? And so instead of blaming these external forces, I believe that we should look internal. What are the things that we're doing that everybody else is not doing that seems to be holding us back? And I mean, I could list them off. So let's start with the big thing, right? The big thing is we're not treating ourselves fairly. And what I mean is when you see the black community speak, when you see the black community react, they react as the black community, meaning all people of color are this. And so no one actually shouts out, hey, well, it's not all people of color are this. We seem to be the only ones that do X, right? A good example of that is the value of education. So I've heard I have heard African Americans um, say to their children as a reward for not getting on their nerves, oh, okay, you won't have to go to school, right? But then you can hear countless stories of immigrants, black immigrants, who come to this country where um, education is it. If you come home with a grade that's less than an A, we have a problem, right? And so my argument is the ethnic differences, the cultural differences like that, how we value education, how we value community, how we value the neighborhoods we live in, how we value family, and how we deal with toxic family all contribute to our success as a demographic. And so our net failure as a demographic can basically be boiled down to those same things. Our net failure can be boiled down to that we are not, I know people hate this buzzword, right? Cultural appropriation, but we are not observing how other cultures work and appropriating those actions. Instead, we're getting angry that someone who looks white is wearing braids, right? Instead, we're getting angry that someone who looks white has um, what do you call those things? Dreadlocks, right? There are white people in Jamaica, but we see somebody who's white wearing dreadlocks without knowing their heritage or where they come from, and then we automatically assume that's cultural appropriation, right? So here's my argument: let's appropriate some culture for ourselves, right? There's some things we do right and cool, like black people have the entertainment industry pretty much on lock, right? We have some of the biggest entertainers, some of the biggest athletes in the world, period. Like non-negotiable. It just happens, right? You got the Olympics. When it's a physical sport, it's usually black people on display, right? So we got that on lock. Culturally, excuse me, we got that on lock. So culturally, um, that's not the problem. The problem is what we do for everybody else. Why do we overvalue our children getting into entertainment and sports? Why is it that everybody's son needs to play football? Why is it that everybody's son needs to play basketball? Why is it that when Colin Kaepernick got his advertisement deal for Nike, there were mothers out here saying that they're going to go support Nike and decking their kids in all this Nike gear when they could barely pay their rent or their gas and electric, right? Why are we not being better consumers, right? And so these are actual solutions. Be a better consumer. The I can Google it. The average spending power of the black community is like 1 point something trillion, right? Uh, Probably spelled something wrong because I typed too fast. Oh no, I got it. Bam. Ooh, look at that. First article from 2018, 1.2 trillion, right? So the spending power in the black community is 1.2 trillion dollars. The question is, what do we spend it on? I'm not going to go into a Google search hole, right? But I can tell you, I remember articles that read that black women were more likely to drive luxury vehicles, even though they make a fraction, significantly less than white women, right? I read an article that said black women were more likely to buy jewelry, even though they make significantly less than white women, right? And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I want you to understand that how you spend the money that you get, the very little bit of money that you do get, how you spend it matters, right? If tax refund time comes and you get a huge refund check and then you consider that free money that you go blow, you're doing life wrong. And these are things that we can change culturally that would drastically change the curve of building assets as a demographic and drastically change how we spend and manage money and how we survive in the communities. Like what people don't understand is that this race debate is like a big bait and switch, right? I hear over and over and over again through prominent left figures that race is a social construct. But nobody walks away from that conversation saying, because race is a social construct, ignore anything to do with race. Instead, they say, race is a social construct, support black owned businesses. Race is a social construct, use black banking. Race is a social construct, reach out and support black people, right? And those two things do not, in my opinion, work. I believe that they're mutually exclusive. If race is a social construct, then whether you support a black owned business or a white owned business is irrelevant, right? And one of the articles that people cite is how long a black dollar survives in a community. And so for every other ethnic group, it's measured in days. And for black people, it's measured in hours. And they say, because of this, support black owned businesses, use black banking, because a black bank is more likely to lend to black people, and et cetera, blah blah blah, right? And I completely disagree. I think what's more important is what you are doing with your money, not who you spend it with. I think what's more important is how you budget, and not the owner of the company who gets the money. And that's something that we can fix. Instead of harping on black-owned businesses, there are plenty of articles and books and everything out there that talk about how to manage a budget, how to live on less than what you make, how to spend and be a better consumer, right? We all have to be a consumer at something, right? We don't produce everything in our lives. We have to buy things, but there is a way to buy things so that you don't screw yourself out of money, right? And what you see in the black community is that we have a large amount of spending power, 1.2 trillion, right? But the majority of that money goes to necessities and entertainment. Most of it does not go to savings. Most of it does not go to investments. Most of it does not go to assets that appreciate in value. So how can you expect us to compete on that larger scale when we are purposefully taking our money and doing other things with it? So then the next question that usually comes up is, okay, but fine. I understand that. But you need to understand that if you make nothing, then you can't worry about investing because you don't make anything. And you know what? You're right. And in all honesty, most black people don't pay attention to politics because they're so busy trying to make sure they can keep the lights on. That's fine. My whole point here is what you have. How do you manage what you have? Do you have a budget? We need to culturally appropriate some budgets. How about that? How about we culturally appropriate? Everybody wants to contact me while I'm casting. How about we culturally appropriate the importance of education? How about we culturally appropriate the importance of teaching lifelong lessons in finance and character to the next generation? Instead, what you get is kids basically raising themselves. How about we culturally appropriate the deeper religious pretext of abstinence and saving sex for long-term serious relationships instead of just being promiscuous? There's plenty of things that we can do as a ethnic demographic where we're basically copying another race or another ethnicity and taking the positive benefits they're yielding that have been proven and running with that. There's a study. I don't remember the name of the organization, but they found that you only need to do 3 things to be able to get out of poverty. Like you have a 97% chance to not be in poverty within 10 years if you do 3 things. And those 3 things are very simple, right? It's graduate high school, get a job. Doesn't say how much you have to make. Just get a job and don't have a child until you're married. Those 3 things. But then if you look at how we as a demographic function, we're dropping out of high school. We're choosing everything but work in a lot of cases. You saw that 4 million people, 4 million men and another 4 million women who can work are not working, and we're having children out of wedlock like crazy. You know, the marriage rates are down. The single motherhood rate is what, 70%? It's ridiculous. So this is your end result. There's literally only three things that we need to do to make sure that we don't stay in poverty, and we're not doing them. Okay. So I'm in rant mode. So let me sum up everything so I can edit this video. Here's what I think we should do to repair the black community as quick as possible. Thing number one is we need to refine the education system. That would be a state or local policy where we make some significant changes. Significant change number one is we get rid of standardized testing. Teachers are teaching, a lot of these teachers are teaching to the test instead of teaching so that a student has a mastery of a topic. So we need to change that. Number two, we need to teach local and state statutes and laws in class. You need to, while you're going through high school, learn. You are a citizen of Baltimore City. Baltimore City has these laws. Here's where you can find some laws. Here's some most commonly violated laws by people around your age. Don't break the law, right? And then number three, we need to be taught finances. Here's how you write a check. This is balancing a checkbook. This is how you manage a bank account. This is basic investment. This is what you should avoid investing. This is why loans are bad in most cases. This is when, this is why loans are good in very few cases, right? All this stuff should be taught in school, but it's not. That's a problem. So that's fix number one is how we deal with education. Fix number two is how we deal with the police, right? So this has to be a change from the institution. So a city level, state level change, and a change from within the community. The city state level change is you need to appoint a council. I'm a comic book geek, so the first thing that came to my mind was the Council of Reeds. But you need to appoint a council. Somebody from the DA's office, somebody from the police department, and then a citizen from every district that a specific police region services. So, for instance, Baltimore City Eastern Police services X amount of zip codes. So there should be a citizen from each one of these zip codes who volunteers and sits on this council. Anytime there is a report of a excessive use of force, the council needs to investigate it automatically. Period. No questions asked. The council investigates the excessive use of force, and it comes back with a determination where the majority vote and the council leader is a civilian. Done. On the ethnic side, what we need to do to fix the police situation is we need to stop the whole stop snitching craze. It just needs to go away. A lot of our violent crimes within our communities are not being prosecuted because we don't want to stand up as witnesses, because we don't want to say that we're a snitch, because we don't want to say what's going on. So we are killing ourselves, and then we're not telling the police who did it when we know who did it, and then that person goes on and kills somebody else. It needs to change. So you can't fix the police over policing your area until you reduce the violent crime, and you can't reduce the violent crime until you allow the police to do their job properly without interfering, and that also means complying with being a witness if necessary. Period. I really don't see any reasons to argue against that, right? So to summarize, because I'm moving a little bit quick, is number one, education. Number two, police, both the local side, state side, and ethnic, right? Number three, family management. This one is a little bit complicated, but not. It's complicated in the sense that people fail at this drastically, including me. I failed at this, right? Don't have a child out of wedlock. Do not have sex until, let me change that. Do not have sex with anybody that you can't see yourself with for the rest of your life. And that means you won't have sex with most people. And that's okay. Period. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry. I know sex is fun, but don't do it. Number two, in family management, you need to understand that no one in this world owes you anything. No one. Not your blood relatives, nobody. The only two people in this world who ever owed you anything were your parents as a minor. And their job was to open doors for you so you can go out into the world, so that you can go out into the world and be successful. If they didn't do that for you, I'm sorry, but they don't owe you anything beyond that. So just stop expecting things from them. And do not allow your family to expect anything of you because you started to succeed. A really big problem that we have in our community is that people with nothing are asked to give of the nothing they have to other people with nothing. And so if you have nothing and you give the little bit you have, you can expect to never acquire anything to begin with. So, stabilize yourself first. Take care of yourself first. Build your foundation first. Your immediate nuclear family comes first. Nobody else outside of that immediate nuclear family owes you anything, period. I don't care what your culture is. I don't care where you're from or how you used to do it. Just don't, right? So, to summarize, education, police, family, management matters, right? And then another thing about family that I really, really don't like is the I don't know how to word this. I think I'm gonna skip it because it might be a little bit too controversial. Let me refine my thought on that a little bit. All right. So now the last thing that needs to change at the federal level. Here's what needs to change at the federal level, right? The affirmative action steps need to be repealed. It's already statistically proven fact that students who are accepted into college because of the affirmative action admission rates are more likely to fail out of the colleges, the higher end colleges they were accepted in, when they would perform near the top of their classes at other colleges. So you got kids getting into Ivy League schools where the dropout rate for black people in these Ivy League schools is very high because they qualify based on affirmative action and not their own skill. And because they qualify based on affirmative action, not their own skill, they cannot keep up with the class. A college like Harvard, like they move, they snap. If you can't keep up with the course content, you get dropped. In the sense that your grades drop and then you'll probably disenroll and then you'll be disenfranchised and not happy with the college experience and probably never try again. So we are screwing ourselves out of really good workers because we're sending them to schools that they're not qualified for based on the fact that they're black and they were underprivileged. We need to stop that at a federal level. It needs to stop. Our programs designed to support the black community from a federal level should be this. Number one, healthcare reform. Healthcare reform should be in the form of a law passed specifically to limit the amount of profit you can make on a product, right? So we say if you introduce a brand new product into the market, the maximum you're allowed to profit is 100%, which means you can charge 200% of what the product is worth. After 5 years, the maximum you're allowed to charge is 150%. After 15 years, you are allowed to charge no more than a 15% markup on the item that you are marketing. And that's a product or service, period, right? So 200 for the first 5 years, then 150 for 5 to 15, and then 105. So a product that's been circulating and is in high use for 50 years, you don't have to worry about paying a crap ton of money for this product because by law, you cannot charge more than X. So you can still make a profit on each product, but your profit's not going to kill us, right? So that's healthcare reform. Another federal thing that we need to change is the way we do taxes. It pisses me off. Everybody's talking about how the tax breaks are only for the rich. And newsflash, if you don't make anything, we can't give you a tax break. Duh. So how do we fix that? Let's change the way we do the tax distribution tables. Right now, the standard deduction for somebody getting paid bi-weekly is like $160 a check, $161 a check. What does that mean? So that means the first $160 you make of every paycheck, if you get paid bi-weekly, doesn't get taxed. It's yours to keep. You're good. Everything after that gets taxed. The way it works is if it's over 700, then 10% of everything over 700 is the government's. And then that number scales depending on how much you make in the check, right? So you got people that make less than $40,000 a year, and the federal government and the state government and the city government are eating $100, $200, $300, $400, $500 out of their check every pay period. Not to mention Social Security. We'll get to that. So what we need to do is change that. so that the standard deduction is, let's let's be brave. Standard deduction is $1,000 per check if you're biweekly, right? So that means uh, $26,000 a year, not taxed. Period. So the standard deduction now changes, right? It's 12 grand now for a single person. I'm saying it's 26. I'm saying the first 26 probably should be 30. The first $26,000 you make in a year is tax free. And not only is it tax free, but we don't take anything from it. That first $1,000 you make, no FICA tax, which means Social Security or Medicare, no state, no federal tax, no locality tax. It's yours outright flat. It's all your money, right? When you add FICA, like let's say you live in Baltimore City. Baltimore City's tax rate is 3.7%. Maryland State's tax rate is like what, 6 or 7%, I don't remember. And then the federal government, depending on how much you make, scales, right? On top of that, though, the federal government also takes 7.5% of your 7.8% of your check for FICA, right? Medicare, Social Security, right? So all that money just goes right back to you. It's all back in your pocket, and it's there at your check. You don't have to wait till the end of the year and to file your taxes to do it. That's number one for tax reform. This is a two-part deal. Wow, I think I need to split this video. This is a two-part deal. The second part is, okay, after you got tax reform and the first $26,000 a year is good, what do you do with the rest? Well, squash the brackets, right? Right now it goes from 0 to 10%. Then it jumps up to like 22% or something. Is ridiculous, right? 5% of everything you earn over 26,000 up to 50. 10% from 50 to 100. 15% on everything over that. Sorry, we're not taking any more from rich people. I actually like rich people. Jay-Z's rich. I want him to keep as much money as possible because he's a huge philanthropist. There was a news report, like, what was that, a year ago, where he went to the club and he dropped stacks. And he tipped the waitress that was helping him $16,000. Like, that's G status. And he didn't have to do that. He could have tipped her $100 and she'd have been happy. He could have tipped her $1,000 and she'd have been happy. But he actually tipped a percentage of his check. That's G status. Why would I take money from him when he's supporting the community like that? No thanks. I'm not trying to go there, right? So, bam. So that's the tax system, right? The next thing you want to change is Social Security, right? Social Security preys on the poor bad because the amount of money you get in Social Security depends specifically on what you pay in. So if you pay in more, you get more, right? The reason why this preys on the poor is because they don't make much. So they make a little bit next to nothing, which means they pay in a little bit next to nothing. And so the amount of money they were paying in is more important to them up front while you're taking it than it is long term. Social Security needs to change. I would change it by saying if you're under the age of 40, your SOL, everything you contributed to Social Security is gone, but at least you get that 7.5% back on the check. I might even say mandate Social Security ends, employers must give at least the difference so that the raise from losing the Social Security is 10%, and then the employees can take the other 4%, right? Because the way it works is the employer pays 7.5%, you pay 7.5%. So hey, employer, give them like 3, toss them a bone, and then you actually make out. You make out like a bandit. Bam. 40 and under, no FICA tax anymore, but you don't pay into it, but you don't get anything back. Right? 40 to 50, I think we need to analyze that deeper. 50 and beyond, you stay in the Social Security system because you're already brought in. Between 40 and 50, I might even say you have the ability to opt out of Social Security. Like you can just walk away. And if you want to walk away, then we'll give you a flat check based on some number that the data scientists come up with. I don't know. Right? All right. So from the federal level, we got healthcare reform, tax reform, right? The next thing is immigration reform. Uh-oh. Oh, big topic. Big topic, big topic. Woo! You ready? Okay. Here's how it is for immigration reform. Fact. We need legal immigrants to be able to come into this country and work, because this country's part of this country's power is the fact that you can come in not being an American, and then you can integrate into the system, into the economy, and be an American. You can be an American, and that is powerful as hell. We don't want to take that from people, but we also want everyone to know that there are rules, and you don't bring your ass here risking your kid's life, having people dying in rivers from drowning, trying to get here when it's not even legal for you to do it that way. You don't. And so what I'm saying to you is, for immigration reform, we need to go to these countries. Go to Venezuela, go to Honduras, go to Ecuador, wherever we need to go, where these people are coming in droves illegally, and say, what do you need to make your country work? And not just America, but every other Western country needs to know that it is imperative that these developing countries stabilize and become prosperous. Because if they do not, they will prey on us. And it makes no sense that we're putting so much heart and value and time into the illegal immigrant population in this country when I got people who were born here and are rightful citizens and can't pay their gas and electric bill. That's utterly ridiculous. I'm not feeling it. No. All right. So that was a quick rant. Yeah. Solutions. That's all I'm saying. We have these. There are things we can do to fix what's broken so that we can prosper. And it's incumbent on us to do these things. Peace out.